Before we can pass on to our children and our grandchildren the value of chastity, we have to rediscover it ourselves and in its widest possible definition.
Chastity has first of all to do with the way we experience and relate to reality in general. So that to be a chaste person is to experience reality in two senses, where it's fully reverent in our experience and fully respectful in our experience. Chastity is not just to do with sex, it has to do with sex. And sometimes has the important part to do with sex because sex is so strong inside of us. But chastity it's a much wider concept. See, chastity is a lot about waiting. All irreverence and all disrespect is lack of chastity. The same with all impatience is lack of chastity. Another component is the whole idea that chastity is the capacity to carry tension. See, to give it an image, when Jesus sweated blood in the Garden of Gethsemane, he was being chaste. He was refusing to short-circuit anything, and he was living with that tremendous tension where Luke said he ended up sweating blood rather than violate what was true. And so chastity is a lot about carrying tension, patience, and just kind of a general respect for reality. Chastity is a life concept, whether you're religious or not. Ultimately, your happiness and the happiness of a culture depends on whether you're chaste or not. I don't know anybody who says, my life is really good and I'm happy and my life is meaningful and profound. We're all searching. And I think we need to have courage, because it's going to take courage. To have real courage to look at is lack of chastity in our life. In our unwillingness to be patient, to carry tension. See, from the time we've been kids here, we're impatient. We want to get to Disneyland real quick. We want a computer when we're 4 years old. We want, these kinds of designer jeans, and later on we don't want to wait at stoplights. We don't want to wait at lines and banks. We don't want to wait for sex before marriage. We don't want to wait. We've never been taught to wait for anything. See, so when chastity breaks down, community breaks down. Inside of a family, when chastity breaks down, the family breaks down. And then inside of ourselves, inside of you, inside of me, if my chastity breaks down, my integration breaks down. I'm cynical, I'm not sure who I am anymore, I have a negative attitude towards life and the world, there's no enthusiasm in me. That's always a sign of lack of chastity. God gave us ecstasy, but ecstasy always lies at the end of something that's profound. When that's short-circuited, it's the same as taking a drug. And then what it does, there's been no sublimation, there'll be nothing sublime. The great myth in our culture is that resolving tension brings psychological happiness. No, it doesn't. It brings a certain psychological relief and release that's momentary. You can't have a profound experience if you've known somebody for 6 hours and you go to bed with them. It's like, doing a great work of art in 3 hours or writing a thesis in 6 hours. It can't be done. A marriage, a family, a friendship can only remain together when there's transparency. Lack of chastity is the opposite of transparency. When Clinton made his famous confession on August the 17th, he ended by saying, even a president has a private life. Okay? Now, how different that is than, say, when Cardinal Bernardine was accused falsely of sexual abuse, and he went on television and Bernardine said, anybody who knows me knows that isn't true. He said, my life is an open book. And people who knew that was true. See, that's the definition of chastity. There's no secret, private distrustfulness inside of the person. And that's the key to community. As an adult culture, we're chronically depressed. It's not that we're bad, it's just, there's a lot of cynicism. We haven't got the courage right now to look at our unhappiness, to name it. And we've been everywhere, we've done everything and so on, but we've sophisticated ourselves into unhappiness. If you've had an adventurous past, erotically, anybody, There's good news and there's bad news. The good news is, in this life, we have a marvelous resiliency as a human being, both in terms of body, but also in terms of soul and spirit. The harder news is that it takes work. It doesn't happen automatically, and we shouldn't be naive about it. Like real growth, like everything else, takes work. So it may involve counseling. One of the things that 12-step literature has taught us is that if you ever want to get beyond any kind of addictive behavior, one of the first things you got to do is you got to find another human being. Catholics call it confession, whether it's to a Catholic priest, whether it's in a 12-step program, whether it's to a psychologist, whether it's to your best friend having coffee, but there's something has to be an ownership of that where it's expressed and laid out. And that's hard, that's gut-wrenching. You know, an alcoholic friend of mine who hasn't drank for about 20 years said sobriety is only 10% about alcohol. It's 90% about honesty and transparency in your life. It's the same with fidelity. You know, and then the longer we do it, the better we become in a real way. You know, what cures more people of sexual promiscuity than any church is falling in love with somebody for real. And then nobody has to convince them. They see it. This can't be. I can't be this person and do this schizophrenic stuff on the side. Your heart changes. You become different. See, that's what I used to call re-virginization. You can re-virginize. The way we have to move our culture along is not by telling them you're wicked or this is wrong and this is that. The only way we can do it is by showing ideals. Say, this could be better. There is more. Your marriage could be more. Your life can be more. See, and then when we have the more, that's when we eradicate the past. See, in the light of the more, you look back and say, I wasn't happy there. It's interesting, we're always told God loves you. Well, we don't really believe it, we believe it theoretically. You know when you believe it? The first time you're able to love somebody else or something in that way. Take the young father. He picks up his infant daughter, and for the first time in his life, he realizes what love is, because for the first time in his life, he's loving unselfishly. He's seeing the child the way God is seeing him. It's his first experience of real divine breakthrough. That's the real baptism, you know. See, and then they start, that catalyzes, what do I believe in? What can I give this kid? And see, that's the beginning of real faith. That's the beginning of everything. See, because then that's when God breaks through to you, which gives you a chance then to break through to God. Paul Ricoeur calls it second naivete. Jesus calls it becoming like a child again. See, notice Jesus didn't say become childish. He said, but the secret to happiness is to become childlike again. We have to become post-sophisticated. We have to become post-liberated. And that means to become chaste again.